My name is Mackenzie Stoller, and I work for a bank called MUFG. I have worked there since June of last year, so just over a year now. What I do in my day to day job is as an internal auditor, I will independently and objectively assess the controls and risks surrounding the activities that are performed within the bank itself. So I will look at specific departments and what they're doing to provide an opinion on how well they're mitigating risks. And that opinion eventually it goes both to the department I'm auditing and up to the board of directors, and subsequently any shareholders, just to give them an objective assurance about the organization. What I like about the job is I'm working a lot in the gray area, so I get to be subjective, and I don't know, it kind of forces me to work a bit more. It's not a right or wrong. I have to really brainstorm with my colleagues about whether or not we're going to pass a test or not and see if it's actually acceptable. So that forces me to kind of learn more about the spaces I'm working in, which I enjoy. And what I don't like is due to our methodology, we have to approach every audit the same and we have to do a lot of the same work. So a lot of the times our testing becomes the same thing every time. And when you're doing multiple audits in a year, it can get a little mind numbing. But luckily that's not always the case. So it's only sometimes, and I've only been here for a year, so not too much of a problem on my end. What made you choose this route? I really stumbled into it. I switched majors early on from a math major to an accountancy major, I think my sophomore year. I didn't fall in love with accountancy. I just kind of settled. That sounds horrible, but that's really the truth. I didn't dislike it though. I think I liked it a lot more than I liked math. And there were certain aspects that I liked and enjoyed, but I was not looking forward to doing external personally. I understand it's a great choice for some people, but I did not see that being something I would truly enjoy in the future. So one day I was going to career fairs and I had a friend who had met the recruiter for this bank, and she introduced me to the recruiter, and I went to the interview, had an internship, and eventually came back full time. So I just ended up stumbling into the right place. I got very lucky. I didn't really know much about internal auditing while I was at ASU. It was kind of something that was only really mentioned a little bit. So I really lucked out with this opportunity. Also, I chose to stick with it mostly because I enjoyed it, but also the pay was pretty nice. So I just had to slip that in there. How often do I use data analytics in my job? Pretty much every audit I am using Excel in some way. We have to sample populations a lot, and in a bank, especially when dealing with transactions, there's upwards of 10 or 30,000 transactions. So using Excel to help filter down to the samples that we want and compiling data really is helpful. There's also been times on audits where I've had to read code, and while that wasn't necessarily a requirement for my job, we do have a data analytics team that will take care of the code. It did help me kind of understand when the data analytics came in and what the work they did, what it meant. So that was super helpful. I do end up using it almost every week at least. Given that you do not work in public accounting, was anything you learned in your auditing class helpful? Yes. So I remember learning how to identify controls and assessing risks. And while they were more towards the financial reporting aspect, I was still able to apply the same kind of thinking to just the general day-to-day operations that the bank undergoes. Additionally, I remember learning about how to work with the client, and despite the client being the bank I work for, the attitude is generally the same. Not really a ton of people love being audited, so there are times where you have difficult situations, and the knowledge that I gained in college and in my public accounting program helped me kind of attack those situations, or perhaps address is the better word, and deal with them as they come.
Hi, my name is Matthew McCann. I'm a forensic accountant at a firm called Phoenix Financial Forensics in Scottsdale. And I've been working there for about 14, 15 months now. My daily job looks different all the time. I don't really know what my week's going to look like. Most advanced I know what my day will look like is 2, 3 days in advance. Um, we do a lot of litigation support, so we're trying to um, help a court case either prove something or refute something for a jury. And so a lot of the work just comes as it comes. It's not consistent. Sometimes we'll have 8 cases, sometimes we'll have 2. Um, what I like about my job is that my hours are very flexible. It's very different than public accounting. Public accounting, you have a busy season and you're working maybe 60 to 80 hours a week is what I've heard. I have not done public accounting, so I'm not exactly sure on that, but my weeks never would get more than 50 hours, probably never more than 40 hours like a normal job. Um, and also being at a small firm, there's less than 10 people in my firm right now, so they're very flexible with me. If I need to take a couple hours off to do something, I can make it up later in the day. If I need to take a day off for studying for the CPA exam or to do something for a family member or so or whatever I need, it's easy. Very rarely would they tell me no. We need you that day. Usually, they're very flexible with me. Um, what I don't like, that's a tough question because I really enjoy my job, and I'm being honest about that. Maybe when we have only a couple of court cases at a time, it is kind of difficult to find work to do, and that might be the biggest negative for me right now. It gets boring when there's a week where there's really not a lot of work to do. That should be changing soon for me, but it's happened a few times recently. What made me choose to go into forensic accounting was I met actually one of the partners of the firm through a friend, and he described what forensic accounting is to me. And what it is, it's a lot of working things backwards and reverse engineering, figuring out, okay, this is the end result, and what was the path to get there? And my brain works that way. It excites me to try to think like that, and so it's just a natural fit for me. Data analytics in my job. We use a ton of data analytics. We do some healthcare accounting to keep a more consistent schedule because, like I said, the litigation is a little inconsistent. So we do cost reports for hospitals, and we do Medicaid reimbursement calculations, which are very, very in depth. We get patient downloads from hospitals for the entire fiscal year, and we have to use data analytics to go in and, well, I'm not going to go deep into what the analyses are because we have a ton of them, but there's a lot of data analytics involved um, in just one file of client data. And then for the litigation, the whole thing is analysis. The whole thing is analysis that we have to present to a jury. Given that I don't work in public accounting, what I learned in my auditing classes that really helps in my field is professional skepticism. That by far is the biggest takeaway that I had from my auditing classes. Obviously, in I think every field of accounting, you need to exercise some degree of professional skepticism, but in forensic accounting, you definitely have to exercise a lot of it because if opposing counsel tells you one thing, you can't just take their word for it because you're against them. So you need to be able to confirm it or have beyond doubt, you have to be able to say that you agree with it beyond doubt. And there's a lot of professional skepticism involved in what lawyers tell you, what the opposing forensics tell you. I'd say no matter what field you're going to go into, professional skepticism is going to be key.